Good evening and welcome to the first joint Climate and Nature Advisory Committee, which is South Oxfordshire with Vale. I'm going to pass straight over to Candida Basilio for our first item, which is election of a co-chair. Candida.
Good evening, everyone. So to start the meeting, we are required to elect a co-chair for this committee from the Vale of Whitehorse District Council. The co-chair was not named at full council like it was at South, so the committee as a whole are able to vote for a co-chair in this meeting. Please can I ask for a nomination for co-chair, a member of the Vale of Whitehorse District Council. Once we have a nomination, can I ask all committee members to raise the hand button if they wish to vote in favour?
I would like to nominate Eric Delaharp, and I note we have a question or hand raised from Sarah James.
I would like to propose myself.
Okay, so we have Candida.
Well, Andrew, you put a nomination forward first, so if we can deal with that one first. So if we could have a show of hands for Eric Delaharp as the co-chair.
Can you be on cameras, please?
If we use the raise hand, I think would be best. If I give you a couple of minutes.
Sorry, Candida. Sorry, Stefan here. I mean, procedurally, surely we should ask for all nominations and then put both of the candidates or 3 or 4 candidates to the vote rather than one at a time. That's normal procedure, I think.
The other thing I'd like to hear is a summary of the candidates and why we should vote for them. I've no idea what I should vote for candidates at the moment.
Well, I wouldn't recommend that because I think it's for people to know the candidates anyway. So, but certainly we need to. What we do is we accept nominations 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, and then we vote on each of them, and whoever gets the majority gets the majority. And if it comes down to one drops out and then another one and then whatever, hopefully there'll only be 2 standing.
Okay, are there any other nominations apart from Sarah and Eric? In which case, Candida, over to you.
Okay, please can I have a show of hands to support the nomination of Eric Delaharp, please?
Edie, could you check my hands up? It's not showing me on my system either.
Okay.
Jill Rayner.
Is everyone, if everyone's ready, then I have 4 hands. Does that include you, Jill?
I don't know, I can't see. It's showing.
Because I saw your hand show and then it went away again. So if you could confirm.
Yes, if you could show mine, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we've had 4 votes. So if we could then, unless there's any other people who want to mention anything, we'll move on to the vote for Sarah James, please. If you could cancel the hands, and then if we could cancel any hands originally, and then so we've got 4 again.
Well, then, in the absence of anybody else standing, we have to have another vote. No, there aren't any procedures for casting votes. What we have to do is run the election again, and hopefully somebody will switch sides or not, as the case may be.
I mean, we could try waiting for Councillor Scott Horton to return to the meeting, as he may wish to vote one way or the other.
Sorry about that. I'm back now and I can actually hear people now, so that's nice.
Sorry, Scott, can I just check?
Were you on the vote?
Councillor Gavroshak, if you just let me finish. Scott, I was just going to ask, did you vote at all, or were you gone before that?
No, I was not present for any vote.
Okay, so if we could just run the vote again. So if we start again with Councillor Eric Delaharpe as co-chair, if you could raise your hands using the raise hand function.
Councillor Delaharpe should vote for himself.
Which he can.
Okay, so we have 6. And if we could then put those hands down, please. Thank you. And can we have a vote then for Sarah James for co-chair of the committee? Okay, so that's a vote of 4. So Eric Delaharpe with 6 votes, that's the majority. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, congratulations to Eric as co-chair of the committee from Vale. Thank you very much for your participation, everyone. As we are a new committee, I think it would be good to actually just go through who we've got here, and do shout out if I've forgotten any names. I'm Andrew Tinsley. I'm co-chair with Eric Delaharpe of the Joint Climate and Nature Advisory Committee, and we've got to come up with something catchier than that. But I suspect it will be, with local government reorganisation, it will be immaterial before it becomes important. So I am by background an environmental scientist, but I'm also a councillor for North East Didcot. So if I pass on to Peter Ramsdale, please.
I'm parish councillor and district councillor for Wheatley Ward.
James Norman.
I'm a district councillor for Woodcote and Rotherfield Ward, and an organic farmer in my spare time, and nature conservationist.
Robert Clegg.
I'm not actually a member of Joe Canuck. I'm the Vale Cabinet member for Environmental Services, Climate Action and Nature Recovery.
Thank you. Scott Horton.
Thank you. I'm the district councillor for Cumnor on the Vale.
Eric Delaharpe.
I'm the district councillor along with Robert Madison for Abingdon. What's it called?
Fitzharris.
Yes, lots of catchy names around, definitely.
And my background is in environmental engineering originally, and more recently IT, and very recently personal training.
Sarah James.
Hi, thanks. I'm the councillor for Hendred's Ward, it's got a bit of Harwell campus in it. I used to work at Harwell campus in the Energy Research Unit at Rutherford Appleton Lab, so that's my background, and I now work as a domestic energy advisor, doing home visits.
Thank you. Denise McDonald.
Hi, I'm Town and District Councillor for Didcot.
Thank you. David Brotherton.
Hi, I'm Town and District Councillor for Tame.
Thank you. Robert Madison.
I'm a district councillor in Abingdon for the Vale of Whitehorse. I'm a substitute today, stepping in for Ciara Bentley, who is a regular member of the committee.
Thank you. Checking the names. Stefan Gavroshak.
Hello, I'm Stefan. Town District County Councillor for Henley-on-Thames, and I apologise, Candida. I'm not normally a constitutional nerd, so I will now begin to behave myself. I apologise.
Thank you.
And who else have we got? We have Hayley there. Hayley Gascoigne. Yes, there you are.
Hi. I'm the district councillor on the Vale for the ward of Blueberry and Harwell, which also includes another chunk of Harwell Camp, together with Sarah James there. We're side by side. And say that I chair the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee on Vale for a couple of years, and after that I was also the cabinet member for climate change for a year.
Thank you. I can see Councillor Sue Cooper. Or am I mistaken in that?
No.
Sorry.
She's just viewing, I think.
Hello. Sorry, I'm not a member of the committee. I'm here as an interested cabinet member for the environment for South.
Thank you.
I'm actually a district councillor for Benson and Crowmarsh ward in South Oxfordshire. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, is that all the councillors? I've just had a quick look. I'm not familiar with all the new members yet. But is that are there any councillors who still need to say hi?
It's me, Jill, but I am a sub, so
Oh, Jill, thank you. Yes, from
I'm a sub for a proper person.
No, we'll do introduce yourself, please.
I'm Jill Rayner. I'm district councillor for the Vale in Kingston, Bagpuws and Southmore ward, and vice chair of the Vale, and I'm substituting tonight for Councillor Max Thompson.
Great. Well, thank you very much for stepping in and doing that. Excellent. So yes, thank you. If you can keep your cameras on, it's a public meeting, that would be appreciated. We have, I think, covered apologies for absence there with our substitutes. As far as chair's announcement go, just a simple thing. We're looking at later a motion from Vale, but I just thought I'd bring attention to a motion that South Oxfordshire dealt with on creating a network of cool spaces and being having better heatwave readiness in relation of social housing and full climate adaptation. This is something that is covered in our Nature and Climate Action Plan, which is something we'll be looking at later on this evening. But I'll just ask that in the same way that we would very happily go and check on a neighbour in cold weather and clear their drive and things like that, if you have vulnerable neighbours, do please check on them in hot weather as well. If you can lend them a fan or perhaps offer them a cool space for a while, that is the sort of thing we need to think about as a community to really help each other out. Certainly as far as network of cool spaces goes, we will be encouraging the districts to work with parish halls to see if there's anything there that can improve resilience of communities and other networks of community spaces, which could be cool spaces in hot weather. So that's just one to move forward with. We'll have more on that later. The minutes of the last meeting, well, there wasn't a last meeting, this is a new committee. That's not to say that we're not joining up on lots of work that have been done previously by SEAC and equivalents between South and Vale. And very much so that, as I say, the Nature and Climate Action Plan we'll be looking at later is something that we will it has been worked on by both councils. Moving on, if there are any questions. Sorry, Scott, you got a question.
Thank you. Just a minor procedural one. It's probably really a question for Candida. Given that we, to my understanding, never ratified any minutes of the last SEAC meeting, in effect, before this new merged committee, do we need to do anything about that at any point, or is it just taken as read that they were accurate?
I think we've got two different committees here, which is tricky
Yes.
for that. In the chair's briefing beforehand, we did discuss that and recognise that everything that we had raised there is moving forward. To that end, if anybody does want to raise anything that they feel should be taken forward, or they don't recognise as perhaps being in the current actions, which are quite extensive within the Nature and Climate Action Plan, there is time at the end to be able to do that. So hopefully we can address it that way, because it's a bit of a we have all been thrust together somewhat, and we have lots of new members. So next item on the agenda is declaration of interests. I don't believe I've had any notification of any declarations of interest. Is there anybody that would like to raise anything? See any hands raised? So check on the other screen. There we go. Okay, thank you. And to move on to the next item, urgent business. I understand there is no urgent business. Is that correct? And yep, that seems to be the way. Thank you. And today we have no public participation, although this is a public meeting, and obviously people are very welcome to view it both live and online. And if you are watching online, thank you for joining us. We'll now move on to an update on the work of the Climate and Biodiversity team, which is being delivered by Cabinet Member for Vale, Rob Clegg. Rob.
Thank you. Yes. So a few things from me. First of all, we had the Climate and Biodiversity e-learning module that was launched, I think, towards the end of last year. And that has been completed by over 450 officers, which is great. However, the uptake amongst members has not been nearly so strong. So I really would encourage everyone, particularly on Jokenack, to do that and to spread the good word. Those of us who've been around for a few years, and I think that's most people here, you probably remember the earlier e-learning module about climate and climate action and biodiversity. This new one is a significant improvement on that previous training module, so it's worth doing even if you have completed the last one. Back to training, and now with officers. Last month they launched a carbon literacy training course for officers. It's an accredited day-long programme which aims to equip participants with the understanding of knowledge to act on climate change in our daily lives. The climate team has developed a tailored programme for our councils, and this has been signed off by the Carbon Literacy Trust. And once the training is complete, the participants will be certified as carbon literate. On to the next item, both councils now have a Nature and Climate Action Fund, with the South version being approved at a recent cabinet meeting. The latest round of the Vale NCAF closed at the end of June. We had a total of 27 applications and a total ask of almost 200,000 for competing for a 100,000 fund pot. The equivalent South Fund will be launched in September for 8 weeks. And South members, please do publicise this opportunity to groups in your area. And if you want to ask for experience of how successful the NCAF has been, come and have a chat with your Vale colleagues, because we've been running it for a few years. And further details will be circulated following this meeting. A new licence for nature recovery projects on council-owned land was launched in April. So this builds on a previous existing tree planting policy to support local groups wanting to undertake nature recovery projects, including wildflower meadows, shrub planting, and installing bird, bat and bee boxes on land owned by the councils. In February, we published the first ever biodiversity reports for South and for Vale. The reports showcase all of the great work the councils have been involved in over the last few years, and were widely picked up in the local media and received a lot of very positive coverage. The climate team and grounds maintenance team worked together to design and deliver new nectar and pollen-rich perennial planting schemes at Abbey Gardens in Abingdon. This project has multiple benefits, including reducing the area of land put down to annual bedding plants by 70%, and almost eliminating the use of peat, as well as significantly reducing the amount of time spent on watering and weeding during the summer. Work continues apace on decarbonising our operational buildings, with a number of major projects going live over the last few months. I actually was at the switch on in Wantage a few weeks ago. And we are also currently looking at the remaining buildings and have completed a number of technical studies to identify additional opportunities for solar panels and to understand the costs and savings of the remaining decarbonisation works. And lastly, we'll be hearing later more about the work that's going on to investigate the potential for heat networks in item 9, the next item. So that's all from me, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any questions for Rob, please? Councillor James Norman, I see a hand raised. Would you like to ask your question, please?
I think you're on mute, Councillor Norman.
I do beg your pardon. Sorry. Am I now audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Renewables on council buildings. All the buildings have been reviewed. This is part of a sort of wider question, which also comes up in, pieces of paper all over the place. Rooftop solar, also on DNZ 17 and so on. What has held up putting solar on all council buildings? What has been the barrier so far? We've done quite a number of buildings have got rooftop solar. What's been the barrier to doing all of them, and what is the plan going forward?
Tom, would you like me to take that, or?
Yes, if you're able to, Robert. Thank you.
I don't know the answer offhand, but I could certainly take an educated guess in that. Well, I think cost is going to be a pretty major one. Just the cost of installing all of this. It's not only putting the solar panels on the roof, but of course making sure that roof is structurally sound to take the extra weight and so on. And then of course all of the electrical work to hook it up to the existing electrical network in there. I think just I would expect that officer bandwidth is going to be a fairly significant factor as well. Some of these things take a lot of work. We have prioritised the biggest wins. So the leisure centres are by far the greatest uses of the greatest static uses of energy owned by the Vale. The waste collection fleet, of course, is up there as well, but that moves around a lot more. So the priority has been on the biggest wins, the easiest wins, and then we're working our way down from there. Anything to add, Tom?
No, I think you covered that very, very clearly. It's basically a question of prioritisation, budgets, and working our way through the ones that are able to deliver the biggest load in the first instance. So that's, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Haley Gascoigne has a question.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward one. You mentioned about the e-learning module, and I noted that was also in the report. It's one of the actions of the NCAP. Simple one, could you send around the link for the e-learning? Don't recall when it was last sent out, and I'm happy to be reminded to take the course.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. That's one I looked at. You can never do enough learning on this. It's a vast topic. Okay, if that's all questions for Councillor Clegg, Robert, thank you very much for your very precise and succinct delivery. We'll now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on the heat networks, which will be given to us by Officer Jessie Feith.
Great, thanks.
Jessie, sorry, I'm stumbling my words there. I'm
no
sure
worries.
You won't.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can see the slides up there. I've just got a couple of slides. I'm going to give a quick update this evening on the work we're doing looking at opportunities to develop heat networks in South Oxfordshire and the Vale of White Horse. Just before we start, just to explain briefly that heat networks supply heating from a central source to consumers via a network of underground pipes carrying hot water. They're an alternative way of decarbonising buildings rather than putting, for example, an air source heat pump in every house. You can connect to a heat network. Multiple buildings can connect to a heat network and get their heating that way. There is a big push from national government to support the rollout of heat networks across the country. The Warm Home Plan that was published earlier this year sets a target for 7% of heat demand in England to be supplied by heat networks by 2035 and around 20% by 2050. So, you know, there's some big targets there. They don't work everywhere, but where there are areas that have higher levels of heating demand, the right types of buildings, and also heat sources, crucially, they can be the most efficient and cost-effective way to decarbonise heating compared to that individual building by building approach. So we're looking into opportunities in this as part of our work to support district-wide decarbonisation. And we're considering where there are opportunities to harness waste heat and reuse this to heat other nearby buildings. And particularly at the moment, we're looking into time-sensitive opportunities associated with the data centres that are being proposed in our districts. These large computer systems, as we know, emit a lot of heat, and we're seeing if we can do something about that or use it in some way. We're not, the studies we're doing are not saying yes or whether or not we should have data centres. That's a separate thing, but we're saying if we're going to have them, let's try and use them to the best that we can. So to do this, we are working on what's called a techno-economic feasibility study centred around the proposed data centre at Culham campus. This is the first one we're looking at, and it's being the data centre is being brought forward by the UK Atomic Energy Authority as part of their AI growth zone status. The council has appointed consultants AECOM, paid for by the South Oxfordshire Climate Team budget, and this project started back in mid-April, I think, and is expected to conclude around the end of October. I'm just going to give some kind of brief progress so far update. So AECOM have now undertaken their initial high-level assessment, which used data on heat sources, on existing buildings, and on expected new development to model whether a heat network could theoretically be a suitable solution in this area. These early stage findings have shown that yes, there is a significant opportunity associated with the waste heat from that data centre. I think it's fair to say that the officers working on this have been quite surprised by the potential extent of a heat network. We went into this study thinking that it might be a heat network for the campus itself, for maybe the new housing development that's allocated next door to it, possibly for the existing village. But I think we didn't really understand the potential scale of the waste heat from these kind of data centres, and it has the potential to be much more extensive than that. There is still a lot of work to do to determine how technically feasible it is and the economic viability of this. So what I'm showing you here today is just sort of initial findings that may change. But yeah, that's where we're at. The consultants have advised us that there is potential for the heat network to go over a relatively large area. Initially, they looked at sort of a 12-kilometre radius from the site and have since kind of reined it back a bit based on sort of where could use the heat feasibly and also potential routing. And that was done in sort of a high-level assessment in the first stage of the project. And they have recommended that the next stage, which we're moving on to now, looks at the feasibility of developing a heat network in 3 stages. So the first stage would be a heat network focused on Culham and Abingdon, and this is what they're going to be looking at in the most detail. The second would be extending a network to Oxford to connect in with proposed heat network opportunities in the city. And then the third would be expanding the network to include the Didcot area which means they'll look at the feasibility of taking the pipe down to Didcot. I would say that these 1, 2, 3 aren't actually really priority order. It's more just the order that we're looking at them in the study. And then in terms of what comes next, so we are now just starting what's work package 2 of the study. This will look in a lot more detail at what is technically feasible, and most importantly, whether it could be economically viable. We haven't looked at that yet, so that's what we're looking at now. So this will include things like more detailed modelling of heat sources. The focus will be on the proposed data centre, but they will also consider other options like there's some sewage treatment works, for example, and also just looking at whether big air source heat pumps could contribute as well. They will look at more detailed modelling of buildings that could be heat network customers, i.e. who could connect to the heat work as a replacement for their existing heating systems. They will consider possible routes for the network, looking at things like land ownership, disruption, distance, physical barriers. You know, the River Thames gets in the way a fair bit around here, so we need to think about that. They'll look at optimal timing and phasing for the network. We'll also do some quite detailed stakeholder engagement. We are talking a lot with UK AEA, and they were involved, but obviously they are the key stakeholder in this potential project, but also other stakeholders like potential end users and energy organisations, the energy networks, people like that. They will then do some techno-economic modelling, looking at how much it's going to cost and whether it's economically feasible. They will also help us with preparing for policy, that heat network policies that's coming out of government, and how we can use that to support potentially taking this forward. They will look at commercial benefits of the network, they'll look at risks, and then they'll look at funding opportunities for next steps. And finally, they'll provide us with some guidance, how the council can use things like planning powers to support heat network development over the next few years. They will also provide us with advice on a range of potential delivery models. There's examples of heat networks being delivered all over the country now, and there's a range of different models. Some of them are 100% local authority funded and backed and led, and others are completely private sector led. And then there's quite a few that are a mix of both. So we need to look at all those options there. So that study is expected to conclude in the autumn. At the same time, we also know that there are a number of data centres coming forward around Didcot, around the power station site, and we are also procuring a study that will look in more detail at those opportunities as well. We got a grant from the government, from the Heat Network Delivery Unit, to do this work, and we are evaluating the submissions at the moment and hope that we can appoint someone soon, and the study will kick off in September. It is very likely that the two studies will link up and overlap in places, and we're aware of that, and we'll be working through that. Happy to try and take any questions. Please do bear in mind that these are preliminary findings, so they only give an indication of the direction of travel. But yeah, I'm happy to try and answer any questions, and also provide a further update in a few months when we have a bit more certainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. That's absolutely fascinating. And I don't know about anybody else, but my head's spinning with possibilities now, not least Didcot gets mentioned, and we've got some stuff going up there. There's a few questions, a few hands raised. First one was Councillor Norman.
Hello, Jessie. Is that you said preliminary findings and you gave quite a lot of detail. Is any of this published?
No, not yet.
So there's nothing we can look at?
Not yet, but there will be in a month or two.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ramsdale.
You're on mute.
My apologies. So when a data centre partakes in a heat network, or in the future, do they have to plan to join that heat network before the data centre is built, or is it possible to tap into data centres later? And the reason I ask the question is, as you say, there's a number of data centres, not just in planning, I understand, but actually being built in places like Didcot, and are we missing an opportunity?
So it's my understanding that it's not impossible for them to connect at a later date, but it's a lot easier to do it before they're built. But there is still the opportunity potentially.
Thank you, Jessie. Another question from Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, which I found really interesting. I was really surprised at the range you were suggesting on that map there. I had no concept that you would be transferring heat over a range of miles. As you suggested, I had the idea it would be maybe on a single business park or something. I mean, my question really was, surely you're going to lose kind of the heat energy as it moves through the pipes, and there's only going to be a certain kind of efficiency there. So in terms of moving it a long distance, is the concept more that it's a supplement to like a boiler or something, or is it like a replacement entirely for a heating system, if you see what I mean?
So you're right that the feasibility of a heat network goes down the longer the distance is that the heat needs to travel. If the heat if you have the pipes in the ground for the heat to travel that far, it will do the same as it does nearer. It's just that it costs more money to get the pipes in the ground. It is a huge project if we ever get to that point. This is a massive infrastructure project. There's no kind of skirting around that. So we'll have to see how we go. But yeah, we were very surprised too.
Councillor Horton.
Thank you. I just a few questions on the map you had on the presentation, if I may. Firstly, so what is meant by point loads? Is that sort of major industrial users of energy?
Yeah, those are sort of significant heat users. They're not necessarily industrial. Some of them are things like schools or care homes or things, but they're buildings.
Okay,
that
so then any domestic use would sort of be built on around
yeah,
those.
Exactly. Yeah.
The second one is how was the red line defined that was shown on the map?
So it was basically they mapped all the potential heat demand loads, put them into clusters, and then the red line is just drawn around that as like a broad area of study.
Okay, to sort of show points that there are, because I saw some point loads outside the red line and I was a bit wondering what was going on. I assume
initially they considered further afield and then brought the scope in a bit. Yeah. This is obviously, subject to further investigation, but yeah, it was
understood.
Reining it in a bit.
And then finally, I hate to bring up the spectre again, but LGR, if this is going to be at all run by local government, we are going to be looking at a heat generating area that's going to be potentially in Greater Oxford, and then the majority of the consumers, at least on one of those or two of those points, being not in Greater Oxford. So I assume that's going to be being considered by the consultants as they go through this.
For sure. I mean, this is obviously an emerging area. We are in touch with Oxford City Council already. They have fed in some data for us. Just have to see how it goes. But there are examples of other heat networks that cross local authority boundaries in the country. So it's more difficult governance wise, but it's not impossible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. I've got a few more questions. Councillor James.
Thank you. Yes, also very surprised and impressed by the kind of distances that covers. Can I ask, what are the, obviously this is a feasibility study to understand what's possible. Do you know how that feasibility study might then be able to be used to actually practically deliver a heat network in the future?
So I can give you a kind of very rough idea. You would, once the feasibility study is done, the next stage is sort of detailed design. So once the ideas have been much more tested and there's sort of some prioritized actions taken, you would then progress to what's called a detailed development. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but like the detailed design stage, essentially, where you would look in a lot more detail at sort of exactly how it would work, and that's when you start getting potential buildings much more involved. And then you can use that to apply for government funding. So there's something called the Green Heat Network Fund, which would basically subsidise the construction of a heat network if you were successful in that funding bid. that is a long way down the line. But those are kind of the vague next steps.
Thank you. A couple more questions. Councillor Denise MacDonald, my fellow Didcot councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Tinsley. 2 questions. First one, I hope it's not stupid, but with the heat source, is it envisaged that would be for more sort of new develops and new buildings, or would they go to older buildings, existing buildings?
So it can go to both on the same network. It's obviously easier when they're new because you can plan it in right from the start, particularly like new housing developments. It's difficult to use a heat network to retrofit houses just because of the number of different customers. But it's not impossible. There are examples of heat networks that do that. So I think it can do both in theory.
And would there be a precedent for what houses would be chosen for that?
Mostly interest from the owners.
Okay.
And routing. So normally what happens, I think, is the sort of route is determined by the big heat load demand. So those will be industrial or schools or hospitals or whatever those buildings are. And then if a pipe is going near houses, you might be able to connect. So it probably wouldn't go just to somewhere that's just like existing housing without some other heat loads around them.
And I'm assuming the people who tap into that would have to pay for that. I'm assuming
it's likely that becomes your utility provider. Yeah.
One final question. I've just been to Iceland, and obviously they have a lot of heat, volcanic heat, but I'm pretty sure that they also use residual heat from housings to heat pavements and things, so pavements and roads. And I just wondered whether anyone was thinking of perhaps doing that in the future. I think it's a long way. I think it's a long way off.
I guess they need it when there's lots of snow. Yeah.
Okay.
And just a question also from Councillor Gavashak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. Denise, the thing that we need is for excess heat to be used to cool the pavements, not heat them at the moment, but I would imagine that's even less feasible going forward. Could I ask you, if there are data centres cropping up all over the place, and there will be, is there anything in planning law that actually says when you are installing a data centre, you are going to generate huge amounts of excess heat? Therefore, you have to have a heat network taking the heat away to supplement the heat of homes or businesses surrounding your data centre. So it's really about planning law. Thank you.
I would have to double check, but my understanding is that no, there is nothing at the moment that sets that requirement. They are looking. There was a consultation recently which did mention this, and I think it was maybe in the MPPF consultation a few months ago where they were talking about locating data centers with potential end users of heat and things like that. So rather than just sticking a data center in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing around that could use the heat, actually putting it near stuff that can use the heat. So I don't know the exact details without checking. I can look it up and have a bit more of a detailed response for you. But there is moving in that direction, I would say, but we're not there yet.
That certainly is something we should actively pursue, though, because it just seems barking not to do it.
Yes, and our planners are involved in this this study, and that's at the local level, not a national level, but we're kind of working towards something like that.
Brilliant, Jessie. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that all the questions? I have one. Obviously, we're in the middle of a series of heat waves here. So what about heat dissipation from data centres and heat waves? Because obviously it's a seasonality to this, and how are which users are immune from either being winter or summer users because they use so much in their industrial uses, and which of those are we just going to be left with a lot of heat to dissipate in a heat wave?
well, there is some case for heat networks based on the fact that they take away the heat and then the data centers don't need to provide so much cooling all year round. Yeah, so there are also a lot emerging studies about, there was an article the other day about data centers in contributing to the urban heat island effect and things like that. So I think it's a thing that people are going to be increasingly aware of, and this may be a potential solution to help that.
Can the heat network be used for dissipation without it going to the end users then?
Yeah, yes, I think so.
So there's a whole world to learn about here, isn't there?
Yeah.
My word.
It's a lot.
Thank you, Jessie. That was really, really interesting, and yeah, I'm going to be definitely looking more into that. And it's an incredible both opportunity for the area, especially with our high science community. So thank you. That's been really interesting. Thank you very much for that update.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Andrew, you're on mute at the moment.
Thank you, Dominic. I had to do it sooner or later, didn't I? There we are. Yes, so next item is Joint Nature and Climate Action Plan Performance Update and Annual Review. This has been distributed to the members. As we've touched on before, this has been formulated by officers and councillors over a period of years now from both authorities. So bear that in mind. Should you have any criticisms, it might come straight back at us. However, I will say that I am deeply impressed by what has been done here, and I look forward to the update. And we can have some questions at the end. Obviously this does span quite a wide range of council activities and areas, and whilst we have a good range of officers on the call today, we may not be able to answer all the questions fully, in which case they may need to refer back and come back to the group at a later stage. So if our Senior Climate Action Officer, Chloe Bunting, would like to present, I will mute again, this time properly. Thank you.
Thank you. So good evening. So we're pleased this evening to present to you the annual review of the Nature and Climate Action Plan for the year 2025 to 26, alongside the subsequent updated version of the plan for the delivery year for 26-27. So in terms of timescales, this report will be going to Cabinet in early September. And we're looking to the committee this evening to recommend its approval to your respective cabinets. So as Andrew alluded to, previous committees have had quite a significant input into the original development of the NCAP, which spans 25 to 29, with some additional task and finish groups that inputted into the actions and measures. So this report is kind of in two parts. So firstly, we'll take a look at the update on the work that's been completed to date and taking the opportunity to look back on what has been achieved. I've just picked out a few highlights as a bit of a snapshot of work across the plan. So as already alluded to this evening, the launch of the new climate e-learning training alongside the significant development of the enhanced carbon literacy training, which will be delivered and rolled out, already has been, so across 26-27. Also, the whole council decarbonisation plans for all operational properties have been produced, and these plans identify the most cost-effective pathway to decarbonise heat at our remaining operational sites, and these findings can be taken forward as feasible and also handed over as well. So quite a prominent piece of work. The councils each have also responded to 7 consultations related to climate change or nature recovery during last year, all of which are published and is officers' opportunity alongside members to input into national or regionalised plans. Also another important aspect that was completed last year. We've got some new sustainability story pages on the council websites, which feature case studies from local organisations tackling climate change, how we've supported them, any advice that people looking to take and groups looking to take similar projects forward. In terms of nature recovery, management advice was also provided to the owners of 5 local wildlife sites in South Oxfordshire and 6 in the Vale. And we've made significant progress in eliminating the use of peating grounds maintenance. And by early 26, all brought in compost was peat-free and all brought in trees and shrubs were peat-free as well. So some really great work across the board, which I'm sure you've reviewed in much more detail. For the cabinet meetings in September, we're also looking to add an additional column, which will add a bit of a RAG summary update as well. So it'll be a bit clearer in terms of ease of review for the reader to capture a snapshot of the work that's been achieved. So I'm just going to pause at this point to take any questions, comments or clarifications on the performance update for last year before we look forward to the delivery plan for next year.
Do we have any questions? Sarah, Councillor James.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing amount of stuff done and achieved for 1 year. It's very impressive report. I did have a question about who kind of the final audience is of this report. So obviously we are being asked to approve it going to cabinet, but is this in the end a public report to go on a website for residents as well? Because what I felt was sort of missing or not clear in the report, but I know is elsewhere, is how this fits in how we're doing kind of overall on nature recovery and on climate emissions, and those are sort of in other reports like the greenhouse, which are referenced, like the greenhouse gas emissions report and the new sort of biodiversity reports for our district. Is there, if it is for the public, is there going to be a kind of setting of, because this report's on the actions, but is there a sort of setting of where the actions fit into the actual priorities and the strategy?
So the Nature and Climate Action Plan itself is mainly an internal action plan because it obviously sits underneath the council plan. So in terms of but it is published on our websites and we do obviously refer to it. I think going forwards, the updated delivery plan will obviously transpire to a refreshed plan, which we'll publicise. But the performance update was very much a commitment that we would bring that forward and present internally. I don't know if there's currently plans to publish it into a public-facing document, but Dom, did you want to come in there on anything else?
Yeah, I think providing a sort of a tabular update on what we're doing maybe isn't the best public image. So what we are looking at in tandem with this is taking forward a bit of a dashboard showing some of our performance in key areas such as greenhouse gases, nature recovery and things like this. So there's a separate piece of work going on thinking about how we might communicate that most effectively to the public. So the two things are obviously linked, one feeds from the other, but I think you're right, maybe the actual report itself might not be the most digestible for your average reader.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's a really impressive report. You know, and in some ways a pity to kind of hide the sort of detail and the amount of stuff that has happened. But I'm not sure on its own it makes sense to the public. So that's great to hear. Thanks.
Denise, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. I just wanted to had a question on operational net 0.5, where it says the percentage of council-owned homes with renewable energy heating systems, especially for South Oxfordshire, was 2%. It seemed quite low, but do you have any kind of definite numbers, absolute numbers? Because actually that might be quite high.
Don't have any. Oh, sorry, yeah, you go.
Go on, Chloe.
I was going to say we don't have any exact figures, but we can certainly seek those. But I think probably crucially to say that obviously some of these homes have only just been acquired, so we're kind of taking them as the standard that they currently are. And I think it will be a forward piece of work to look at how we then implement those respectively.
That's okay. I just thought, yeah, 2% might actually still be a quite high number of homes, and I just wondered if that was because of funds or a capacity issue.
I think it's primarily because the majority of the houses have been bought in the last 18 months, and we haven't had a chance to do that yet. So there is actually an action in next year's plan, you'll notice, which is exactly dealing with that issue. So we have to work out what's the art of the possible, and clearly all of the above has budgetary implications. So yeah, we have to be aware of that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification for any members of the public watching, this refers to housing more recently acquired by South Oxfordshire and or Vale. So thank you very much. Councillor Gascoigne.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I had a few points. I'll try and pick the more impactful ones, or just some clarification. So I had a similar thought to Councillor McDonald there, so I'm glad that's been explained. On the operational net zero point 17, which is on page 17, for the facilities team, a number isn't filled in, so I didn't know if we have a number for the number of vehicles that they have, or yeah, I just think in the final report it would be good to have the actual number.
Yeah, we've had that now, so that will be in the report that goes to cabinet. Yeah. Cool.
And then on the district next zero, so action point 8 on page 28, which is a lot about our the climate action fund, which is mentioned in the actions there, which is great. I think that's one of our really good success stories. And I know that the funding that we made available in Vale was 100k, but the figure that's quoted here is significantly less than 100k. And I was wondering if you could explain that, but also that South have managed to use some community infrastructure levy money as well, which obviously significantly boosts the money that they can make available. And I was wondering what's the difference between South and Vale, and why Vale wouldn't be able to do a similar thing.
So on the Climate Action Fund, so that's just for the climate projects. So we split the figure into two. So there's another action that's around supporting nature recovery projects. So the rest of the money to take it up to 100,000 is further down in the report under the nature recovery project. So I think it was pretty much near to the 100,000 that was offered out. It's just been split into two, but yeah, appreciate that. That does look quite misleading on its own in silo there. In terms of the Community Infrastructure Levy Fund, Dom, I'll pass that one to you if that's okay.
Yeah, so I think that's to do with the amount of community infrastructure levy funding that's available and the other demands on its use. So, and also historically, this is not something that's been put forward in the Vale by members or officers. So it's a complicated answer, but it's obviously it's difficult to say looking forward in the current landscape of local government reorganisation. But that it's something that could be a consideration going forward if members at that point wish to do so.
Cool. Okay, thank you. And just one more point, if I may, Chair, which is one thing to say about the climate adaptation. I see the amended action, I think, does improve upon what we had before, which is good, because I think, I don't know if this is just coincidence, but it certainly feels like the situation with heat waves and things like that has become much more urgent. So I think that the action really reflects that. So that's good. And my final question then is on page 31, the District Net Zero Action 12, which is about public electric vehicle charging. And I guess this is another thing around communication. So maybe for an internal report, it's okay. But I was wondering if this gets communicated further, just a bit more understanding around the usage rates, which show 12% in South Oxfordshire and 11% in the Vale. And obviously on the face of it, that doesn't sound like a high usage rate, but I expect it's to do with the calculation because, of course, 100% usage rate would be some vehicles are parked there 24/7, which probably is not really a very good service because then it's not very usable. So I think there's a bit of a narrative there, but you can see how, you know, a report that says 12% usage doesn't sound great. Although I'm sure if you did the equivalent for a petrol pump, it would be even less. But yeah, so I was just wondering how that's calculated and how it would be communicated.
Yes, I think it also probably in reflection would be helpful to have a baseline perhaps of whether that's gone up from when they were originally installed as well. So yeah, we can look to kind of seek out some more data on that and add that in.
Thank
you. Go back to the technical services team, yeah.
Great, thank you. Another question from Councillor De La Harpe. Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I was looking at the data about taxis, which is something we can influence. I was quite surprised. I don't use taxis much, so I was quite surprised at how few are electric. So 2.3%. And then we talk about 40% being hybrid. In my opinion, a hybrid car is a petrol-powered car, and a plug-in hybrid car is a petrol-powered car if you don't plug it in, which a lot of owners don't. So in my opinion, we only have 2.3% of our taxis are truly electric powered, which is scope for improvement, so that's encouraging. And then it mentions there's a review, and the questions would inform us. Is there anything hot off the press? Has that review been completed? Is there something you could tell us today?
So we have been doing quite a lot of work with the taxi licensing team to kind of understand some of the barriers that proprietors find in terms of transitioning to electric vehicles. And they have submitted, we did add in a question to the recent consultation that they sent out to taxi drivers that was quite timely around their policy review, and received some information back from some of those that have transitioned and what they felt was helpful to them and how they kind of practically use that in terms of their work. And we've now got some contact details for some of those that are happy to be case studies. So we're looking at going forwards, and I think this is reflected in the delivery plan for next year, but we're looking at working with the licensing team to input into their newsletter that goes out to all the taxi drivers and having a bit of a feature around EVs in order to help increase that percentage, and also share some case studies of drivers that have successfully transitioned. So yeah, definitely a piece of work we're looking to take forward next year.
Thanks.
Councillor Norman, James.
Hello. Yes, can I also say how impressed I was by the scope of and scale of the work that gets done on this team. I don't know how large the team is, but it's very impressive work. Just a few questions. They don't all need long answers. I can ask a further question if I need to. One of the things that struck me was how many aspects of this you are having to do yourselves. You're having to reinvent the wheel as if there were no national databases or information and so on. A few examples of this were the review of Scope 3 reporting, procurement, offsetting, and also carbon sequestration. All of these, as far as I could read from the report, were things you did yourselves from scratch. And I'm just interested to know whether there were, I wouldn't be too surprised, but I'm just asking if there were not national sources of information on all those things. I mean, we're having to do this for ourselves. Presumably everybody is having to do it for themselves.
Want me to take that one, Chloe?
Yeah.
So we do use lots of sources of national information for all of those things. So I think all of it, there are national approaches to Scope 3 reporting. There is best practice from across the board. So what we were doing in looking at reviewing those things was to essentially review best practice, look at those national approaches, and with a view ultimately to putting forward something which would be appropriate for our councils. So yeah, we're very much not doing it ourselves. And I should just add one other thing. Obviously, what you're reading in the report here is very much a report back on things that the whole council is doing. So it's all of the services in the council. It's very much not just our team. I would need a team of 30 or 40 people to do what's being reported back on here. So it's very much a reflection of the fact that climate action and nature recovery is embedded across the councils in their service delivery. And this is very this is the reason we've set the team up the way we do, and why we run it the way we do, is to try and work with all of these other different services to help them deliver their jobs better in a more climate friendly way.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. And one of those was procurement, which I read that you're going to publish a report on procurement shortly. What do we procure mainly? Is that an easy list to give? Like,
it's a very big question.
What are
everything
the
from a waste contract through to paper, and everything in the middle. So a huge amount, but I mean, obviously the big hitters are some of our bigger contracts, clearly, and how we consider climate and nature recovery within those. But it does even go down to sort of procuring from sustainable sources where possible. Even in the smaller procurement exercises, for example, if it was an interpretation board at a nature reserve, can you buy that locally from locally sourced timber? It's all those sort of questions. So it's across the board really, and it's different scales of consideration depending on the procurement you're taking forward.
So that includes big contracts like the waste contract and so on, not just things we buy, but actual. I mean, it's
procurement across
services.
the board. Yeah. That's right.
Okay, thank you. There was mention of a government proposed loan scheme, DNZ10. Is there any more detail on that? That seems to me the decarbonisation, particularly of heat in domestic properties, which I was involved with for many years, is progressing very, very slowly nationally and on every scale. And I would have thought that a government loan scheme is one of the keys to trying to get this to progress faster. Do we know anything more about that, or is that just pending?
It's, I think, pending. So there is I've immediately forgotten the name of the scheme that's going forward, unless one of my colleagues wants to jump in, but the government has committed 15 billion to decarbonising heat. Jessie's going to save me. Go on, Jessie, please.
So the loan scheme was one of the commitments the government made in the Warm Homes Plan that was published earlier this year. We haven't heard any more details about that yet. So not sure, but
so
it might be coming. Yeah.
This one might be for you as well, Jessie. In DNZ11 energy infrastructure, there's no mention of wind power at all. Which is the sort of Cinderella, really, of onshore wind, because it was banned for so many years. It just seems to have vanished off the face of the country. I think part of the problem is there's no capacity, as I understand it at the moment. But I think there will be applications for onshore wind in the district. Is that come into the LAEP, or has it come into anything you've been working on?
I don't have the thing open in front of me, sorry, so I'm not quite sure exactly what the reporting said.
So it's just to do with the local area energy plan, and yes, it is one of the considerations that's being looked at in the scope of the sort of local area energy planning process, and it's certainly something we're looking at because it has all sorts of implications, obviously, for our districts, positive as well as negative, mainly around perception and siting. So yeah, it will be one of the things we'll have to look at going forward.
I'm just going to weigh in with my view, because because solar panels are quite a good thing. They take up a lot of land, and they're only in use in the daytime, whereas wind tends to be useful in the winter and at night, unlike solar, which isn't. So you need a mix of these things. Just a couple of things on nature recovery. The local wildlife sites project. That has been very limited, I see, because only 8 surveys have been done. I think I actually managed 3 LWSs myself, and they have been surveyed in recent years. Is this something you're doing with other bodies, or is that a standalone project that the district is doing? Because I thought it was part of a wider project that's been done.
It is. The Local Wildlife Search Project is a partnership between all of the districts and the county in Oxfordshire currently, and both the Thames Valley Environmental Records Centre and the Local Wildlife Trust. And you may recall that in setting the budgets this year, both councils agreed to increase their contribution from £2,000 a year to £10,000 a year, as did all of the other district councils and the county council. So we're hoping that this is going to be much more effective going forward, properly resourced and so on and so forth, notwithstanding what might happen with local government reorganisation. But I'll stop saying that now, otherwise I'll say it all the time.
Very, very, very important work. This is just under NR7, Biodiversity Audit of Corporate Land. There's mention of being held back by a lack of cut and collect machines. Sorry, this is getting quite technical now. Now, I own such a machine. Do you keep a database of contractors who can offer to do cut and collect work? I have had a conversation with one of you about this some years ago, I think, actually.
So I think probably the best answer to that one is to put you in contact with the grounds maintenance team, who will be looking to do exactly that thing, cut and collect, over the next few weeks. So as you know,
and there are contractors. I'm not the only person who owns one.
Yes,
there are other people who have contracts.
Indeed.
And here's a really left field question. NR4 rivers. We're quite limited in what we can do. We had a briefing just a couple of days ago in our local sustainability group about catchment partnerships. The big problem, of course, is sewage and sewage works. Is it theoretically possible for Section 106 agreements to be used to fund sewage works improvements?
I think I'll have to pass on that one. No, I'm not even going to try and answer it in case I get it wrong. That's something we can take back to planning, or it's our infrastructure delivery team that deal with applications for Section 106 funding. So this is where third parties want to draw down Section 106 funding. So it would depend on whether any money as part of the Section 106 have been identified for that particular use. So it's usually money that's collected within Section 106 is identified for a particular end use. And so if any had been collected that was specifically related to those issues, then possibly.
Thank you. It's not sort of listed as one of the aims of Section 106, which are, roads, health, education, and so on. It doesn't say sewage.
No, indeed. So I think I'd probably refer back to our infrastructure teams and all the planners to give you a proper answer to that question.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So another hand raised. Councillor Brotherton. David.
Sorry, I just wanted to come in and answer James Norman's question there, because we had the same question on the Barton development, which was approved last year, and it's a big sewage issue there. And the answer, blunt answer, is no. Primarily because Thames Water is a private organisation, and 106 just should not fund private organisations.
Yeah.
It fund public organisations, but it can't fund private. So the blunt answer is no, but it'd be worth checking with planning just to get a better answer.
That's what I assumed.
Great. Thank you, David. Are there any further questions on Action Climate Action Plan and updates therewith? Okay, I would just again like to say I think this is an amazing piece of work. I hope it has longevity as we are moving ever closer as authorities with Ridgeway, and certainly it should be taken forward. That is out of our hands, though, as to what happens ultimately. But with a fingers crossed and a fair wind, it'll be making positive improvements, hopefully for a very long time. And certainly, I think when people ask me about it and what's an example of best practice, and I don't often use that word, but I would definitely say it is here. So I just want to thank all the officers who worked so hard on this, because I think it's a really, really good and important piece of work. So thank you again. Chloe?
Just wanted to check whether you want me to then take forward to look at the second part of part 2, so the update for the delivery plan next year.
Yes, that's probably the time now, but I'm just sitting here being wowed out. So thank you.
Great. So now that we've looked backwards, so time to look forward to the delivery plan for 26-27. So we've amended this to reflect changes in the current status of actions following the performance update. So some actions have been removed where completed and then replaced or amended with a next step action or amendment to the measures. Some actions have been refocused or removed, particularly in the context of local government reorganisation and what we can actually deliver next year. We have included some new actions where opportunities and priorities have been identified, and importantly that no additional resources required, or it's something that a team in the council is already looking to take forward. So, for example, as we've talked about this evening, the development of the low carbon heat networks in the district. So that's a new action to make sure that we capture that under the new DNZ 17. And also under climate adaptation as well, we've expanded this section, particularly to reflect the current context of the extreme heat that we've been experiencing, and ensuring the council has resilience in regards to its operations going forward in relation to the impact of extreme weather. So any further suggestions of actions we'll be now looking at in terms of delivery year 27-28 where feasible, and we can set up some task and finish groups if there's ideas for this. The delivery plan for 26-27, it's envisaged that it will keep the NCAP relevant and effective as a key tool for driving forward the council's net zero ambitions. And now offer the opportunity to open up for any comments or questions for the plan for 26-27. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, I was jumping slightly ahead there, but I can see there is such a huge potential for this. So thank you again. Are there any questions on forward actions? Councillor James, Sarah.
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah, I've just got a few. So one was just on one of the things that is now sort of dropped off the action plan, which was about the Scope 3 emissions. So there's been work done to about how we would record them, but then it's kind of been put to one side because of LGR, and would have to move to obviously whatever the new council, how they will record them. But is there any action still going ahead that is still looking to reduce Scope 3 emissions, even if we can't report them perhaps as accurately as we might like?
Dom, do you want to come in there? But I think it's captured in the operational net zero reports that we're still completing. But yeah, Dom, if you want to come in there.
Okay, Jessie may help as well. So I think a lot of that's tied up with the procurement and how we approach procurement. So I think that's probably the simple answer to that. How we report it is a sort of a separate matter. It's actually how do we avoid taking on contracts or goods and services which have a high carbon footprint. So that's all part of that approach.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. And I had a question about ONZ 8, which is about the waste vehicles and to review the financial and contractual viability of a switch to hydro-treated vegetable oil. So I'd be happier about ONZ 8 if it included in there not just the financial and contractual viability, but also the ethical and environmental viability. Because I know when it came to the cabinets in the new sort of waste vehicle procurement policy, you know, that was in there as well, you know, that it would have to satisfy us on those counts.
Yeah, I think that's an omission rather than anything else. The team did a lot of work with the Ways team looking at all of those issues and fed into that cabinet paper. So I think, yeah, we can add that in to the wording of the action.
Brilliant, thank you. And then one thing I wanted to follow up on was on the reporting on the MEES, the minimum energy efficiency standards for housing report. Obviously, it's not really helping that standard, which I think is not surprising because, you know, basically we act if somebody complains, but the people who have to complain are the people who have no power in the relationship, and they have to complain about the people who have all the power in the relationship. So it's not totally surprising. And I just wondered whether there was any other way we could consider actions that might drive improving private rented energy efficiency and housing standards, which might be more about communicating directly with landlords, perhaps to push them towards actually upgrading ahead of, because they will have requirements to meet a much higher EPC standard, you know, that's sort of bearing down upon them. And actually we've got a lot of good information about how owners of properties can improve their energy efficiency. So I just wondered about whether we perhaps in future could look at actually changing the angle of attack on that one in a way.
We can certainly take it back to the team and discuss with them as to whether there's anything else they have capacity to do. I think that's predominantly what it falls down to in terms of team capacity, but we can discuss with them.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm thinking is that would be almost more of a comms thing, something that we already perhaps do. You know, we already have hugely improved comms on our website that are really clear and helpful about how you can go about improving your own property. And it might just be a matter of somehow linking up the comms on that with the housing teams. Because yes, totally understand that the housing team do not have the capacity to be like going around and hand-holding landlords through this necessarily. Thank you very much.
Great. I don't think there's any more questions there. That is, as I say, it's a huge amount of work that's been done there, and although this is a new version of the committee, it's been done over many years, and I hope its impact will continue to last. I say we won't get into local government organisation, but it sounds like certainly Vale and South Oxfordshire working so closely on this will be a considerable influence, hopefully, on the future as well. If there are no further questions on that, could I ask Dominic to give us a update on protection of chalk streams, please?
Certainly, Chair. I'm going to share my screen with you. So just bear with me. So hopefully you can see a slide on your screen. If somebody could shout, because I can't see anybody all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so this this item on the agenda stems from the May 26 Vale Full Council meeting. And some of you may recognise the motion that's in front of you, which was passed, and that regards the protection of chalk streams. Now, items 1 or 2 on that motion there have been enacted. So letters have been written to both Thames Water and the Secretary of State. And those, if anybody's interested to follow those through and to see as and when we get responses, those will be on the official correspondence page of the Vale website. Now, point 4 specifically mentions the new Joint Climate and Nature Action Committee. And what they've asked the committee to do is to consider what actions can be taken to provide further support for all of our chalk streams, building on the work done with the Letcombe Brook project. So that was the ask from Vale Council. Now, because, as I'm sure you're all aware, and particularly those councillors that represent South Oxfordshire, there are something like 12 chalk streams emanating from both the North Wessex Downs and the Chilterns, which flow into both South Oxfordshire and the Vale. So this is not just a Vale issue, it's equally south. So therefore, I think it's reasonable that we discuss this as a joint group and see if we can come up with any ideas to fulfil the requirements of the motion. Just a little bit of background now. Some of you may be aware of this, but why are chalk streams important? Well, it's primarily because they are unique pretty much to England in particular, because we've got a lot of chalk geology and we live in a maritime climate, although that may have not been entirely obvious the last couple of months, with a lot of rain. Now, the chalk rock acts as a big sponge and absorbs the rainfall when it happens. And then that rainfall issues out from springs at the foot of the escarpment in both South Oxfordshire and the Vale. And because of the unique geology and chemistry of chalk, that produces habitats which are uniquely suitable to a variety of sort of rare and endangered species, including things like, well, the plant, the water crowfoot, which is the thing you most often associate with chalk streams, but as well as things like brown trout and brook lamprey and many other things. Now, particularly in the headwaters of chalk streams, which is mainly what we're talking about here, the temperature regime is incredibly stable. So if you go with a thermometer and stick it in a chalk stream at any time of the year, even if the air temperature is -15, should that ever happen again, you still get a temperature between 10 and 12 degrees. And that's the same year round, certainly for the headwaters anyway. Historically, chalk streams are the source of human settlement as well. So unsurprisingly, the spring-line settlements in both South and Vale have led to the rise of many of our towns and villages, because there was a source of clean flowing water year round, which people relied on for both themselves and for their agriculture. Chalk streams have been identified as a priority within the Oxfordshire Local Nature Recovery Strategy, and they're also considered what's called a priority habitat in planning terms. Essentially, that gives them sort of an enhanced level of protection within the planning system. However, obviously, the reason we're considering this motion today is because they are still under threat. They're still being polluted. They're still having all sorts of issues. So just a quick overview of the chalk streams in the Vale. So you'll notice there's quite a lot of them actually emanating from the escarpment. The main ones, I guess, the ones we're probably most familiar with are the Letcombe Brook, which flows from Letcombe Bassett and Regis out through Wantage and Grove until it conjoins with the River Rock, and the Ginge Brook, which is number 1 on the map there, which flows out of East Hendred. So the Vale owns a couple of small sections of the Letcombe Brook as it flows through Wantage and Grove, which is probably worth considering when we look at what might be done. The situation's similar in South Oxfordshire. Probably the most notable of the chalk streams in South Oxfordshire is the Ewelme Brook, which flows from Ewelme out to the River Thames in Benson. And it's worth noting that number 1, which is the Chinner and Sydenham Brook, is actually the only chalk stream in South Oxfordshire which doesn't have a sewage treatment works on it. So it's actually free from sewage pollution. So in terms of existing activity on our chalk stream. So in the Vale, we have the Letcombe Brook project, which is probably the most well established and certainly longest lasting project, which was set up in April 2003. It's initially started as an initiative between the Vale and the towns of Wantage and Grove, or village of Grove. As a jointly funded project that was hosted by the Vale, and then about 10 years ago it set itself up as an independent charity. The Vale's been funding the project since its inception, and their aims are principally about improving biodiversity, sort of communicating how important it is with people so that they value it properly, and seeking opportunities to sort of remove past interventions with various landowners and things. In South Oxfordshire, similarly, although more recent in origin, there is a lot of work going on within the Watlington Environment Group and the Cuts and Residents Against Pollution, which probably gives you a clue as to where they came from. To, again, similar things to the Letcombe Brook project, improving water quality, letting light into the brook, because in many places it's very heavily overshaded, and that's a common problem with chalk streams in our area. And monitoring water quality, but also monitoring incidents of pollution after some very significant pollution incidents happened a few years ago and effectively killed all the trout within the brook. So that brings us back to the question. So the question is, what actions can we take to provide further support for all of our chalk streams? Now, before we go into discussion, I thought it'd be worth actually just mentioning some of the things we're already doing. So as I've mentioned already, the Vale provides funding for the Letcombe Brook project because they help us deliver some of our sort of flood attenuation services and so on. We can continue to offer funding to these projects through both the South and Vale Nature and Climate Action Fund. So if any of the councillors with wards in South Oxfordshire are in these areas, then that's something that you can certainly push these, or you can point these groups in the direction of. In planning policy, both of our existing local plans have quite good policies. In fact, they're some of the best in Oxfordshire in terms of protection of watercourses. So watercourses, plural, are currently given or have to show a 10-metre buffer between themselves and any built development. The joint local plan, which is coming along and is currently at examination, has a strong new policy, which is called HP10, should you be interested, which specifically identifies chalk streams as an important feature which should be protected. And obviously, finally, we can take action where we own stretches of chalk streams. So we have a current project which we're developing at Willow Walk in Wantage, where we'll look to do some enhancements to that. So I'm going to stop sharing now and then hand back to the chair, who can then encourage people to give us their ideas.
Thank you, Dominic. That was a really good summary. And yeah, just to remember, for what seems to be quite a small area of the country, sometimes it's got a huge contribution to make in terms of ecology and biodiversity, particularly with regard to chalk streams. So are there any questions, ideas would like to see?
I've pasted the motion question in the chat, should anybody need to be reminded.
So what actions can we take to provide further support for all our chalk streams? Councillor Maddison, Robert.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, surely the best starting point would be to invite the people from the Letcombe Brook project to make any suggestions or ask them. I don't know how much of a dialogue exists already, to be honest, between the councils and projects like the Letcombe Brook project, but that would seem to me to be the best starting point if we're thinking about what can we do or what more can we do, is ask or have some kind of dialogue or consultation with groups like that and ask, ideally, in an ideal situation, what would be happening to benefit the chalk stream, and then that can be used as a starting point to for the councils to think about what actually is within their powers realistically to to do. So that's my starting thoughts.
Thank you. It's a great idea. We do have good communication with the Letcombe Brook project, but oddly never thought about asking them that question. So yeah, shout out the really obvious ones as well.
Yeah, certainly if we can use any of the approaches we've got down funding to consider facilitation between groups, that could be a good profile raiser, I think. So yes. Councillor James, Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really interesting. So in my ward, I've got 1 to 5 on your map. So I would really like to know what to do, and what information that I could bring and give and share with landowners. How even to find out who the landowners are, because some I know whether it's going through farms and things, but some of the smaller ones I don't know who the owners are, in order to sort of be a bit of a comms point for environment group in my area and for landowners, to see what we could learn from something like the Letcombe Brook project, in order to be able to start looking at something similar, say on the Ginge Brook or other parts of streams in there. And I did notice something else I thought looked good in the NCAP report. Actually, there was mention of officers supporting a trust in Tame, I think it was, to connect with riparian landowners, so that in order that trust could then help them support chalk stream management. So I mean, I think that's something I'd find really helpful in my ward, in order to be able, to help connect with people who would need to be involved in anything like that bordering the chalk. Thank you.
Great, yes, thank you. That's a lot to think about there. Certainly, if we can facilitate any exchange and communication between the groups, that's something that we could very actively do as a pair of councils and future councils. Councillor Norman James.
One sort of general comment and one question actually for Dominic. The general comment is that the Chilterns Conservation Board, which supports initiatives in the national landscape, of course, does a huge amount of work with chalk streams, has a whole program running on chalk stream management and so on. So one of the main things that we can do as a district council is to support the Chilterns National Landscape, which of course South Oxfordshire does do. So I'm only saying, yes, we need to continue doing that so that they can do that, which, South Oxfordshire District Council does pay its dues to the national landscape, and they need to continue doing that, because the CCB punches far above its weight in terms of acquiring other funding for supporting projects like that. The specific question was just about chalk streams and planning. So some of you may know that planning committee turned down an application for housing at Chalgrove just recently, which was immediately adjoining the Chalgrove Brook, and it was stated that there was going to be a 10-metre buffer. I'm ashamed to say I don't know what HP 10 precisely says. Does it go as far as the request from Vale for a 50-metre buffer? What does it actually say, and would it have made a difference if we'd had that in place at the Chalgrove Brook application?
I won't make a comment on that specific application. That wouldn't be appropriate. But the HP 10 is it's stronger in terms of the way it's worded, specifically referencing chalk streams as priority habitats. The requirements are the same. It's very difficult to go beyond that in planning terms at the current time.
I think so. I think my comment would be, if it doesn't give us a material consideration to use, then it doesn't really help us. I think I'm not sure under what circumstances a statement saying we should protect chalk streams would give us a a material consideration at a planning committee. Obviously, planning committees are being scrapped anyway, so that may not be relevant anyway. But in terms of representations to officers who will be making those decisions in future, that remains an open question, I think.
And if I note your comments and question as look for opportunities to strengthen planning policy in future, would that be fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it would. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice that it's actually being recognised properly, and it can only hopefully improve from there. Councillor MacDonald, Denise.
Thank you. I just Googled how councils could help save chalk streams and found BBOUT, and just wondered if we already have communication with BBOUT. They have a campaign to save chalk streams and do have opportunities for councillors to get in touch with them in terms of how councillors could help.
Thank you. Yes, we do have good contacts with BBOUT on a number of levels, but that's something we can certainly have a discussion with those as with other stakeholders and the Leckenbrook project and so on, and maybe see if we can see where that could go. So that's something we can certainly think about.
Great, thank you. Yes, BBOUT member. I'm sure many of us are here. So, Councillor Horton, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. It's possibly something that's already been being thought about. I know that certainly in the current version of the Vale's local plan, chalk streams do have some mention. I'm struggling to find the currently being examined JLP, but obviously given we've got JLP2 coming through at the moment as well, anything we can do to put it to make sure whatever protections we can are put into JLP2, because that should still hold some weight even long after South and Vale are gone, provided we get it to a decent stage while we do exist.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Councillor Delaharp, Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I recently visited a sewage treatment works, and I was quite surprised to discover that the technology has barely moved since the 50s. Fecal matter gets properly eaten up, and then the water goes into a second tank to deal with the fecal matter from the bugs that ate the fecal matter in the first tank. So it's quite a fascinating process. But there's a lot of stuff that goes straight through the whole system, microplastics and that sort of thing. There's no provision to keep that clean. And the thought of that water going into a chalk stream is kind of horrific. So my first thought was, do we have citizen volunteers who regularly monitor the flow from these sewage ponds into the brooks? I assume we do, but that would be very useful information to kind of publicize and make a fuss about.
Yeah, I'm aware several of the current pressure groups and things like that do have quite an extensive network of citizen volunteers, but that by its nature is something that tends to fall outside of councils and other regulatory bodies. They're more there to challenge them, I believe, but always welcome a fair challenge, I think is what I'd say. Dominic?
There is something worth saying there. So the council has funded citizen science projects, particularly looking at water quality on the River Tame in the instance I'm thinking of. But again, the Nature and Climate Action Fund could be used to initiate and help support citizen science projects which are looking at water quality. So that may be an avenue we could certainly publicise anyway.
Yeah. Would that extend to laboratory costs, for instance?
wouldn't want to get into the details just at the minute, Chair, but I think we can look into that as to see. I think it depends on what the groups are able to do, because that may be a step too far for most citizen-sized groups.
It's sometimes where they fall down is on correct methodologies and follow-up sampling. It's not always a way, but anyway, that's just a topic for another day, maybe. Councillor James, Sarah.
Yeah, I just had another thought, which was I am on the mailing list for Big Chalk, which is the sort of a very large-scale project with the national landscapes sort of taking a lead in it across all the chalk landscapes across England. And I have seen that they have funding sometimes, so I wonder whether that could help us as a district council to deliver anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, that would be a very good group to make aware that potential funding is going to become available. So we can see what's there. And I know as councillors we've all been involved in various councillor grants and things like that, and it's absolutely heartbreaking on the one occasion when we were actually undersubscribed. So fortunately that hasn't happened since. But yes, we wouldn't want it to go to waste, especially with reorganisations in the wings. Right. Are there no further questions on chalk streams? Well, the next item on the agenda is to look at future agenda items. So very much to yourselves, to the floor. What would you like to raise? Are there items that you want to look into further from today? Certainly, I would like to just to put in there is how do we actually work with particularly parishes to provide community cool zones where and it might be something that can help us with parish halls and things like that. We're looking across at France and Spain and seeing a lot of people losing their homes. So emergency planning is something that's got to be very front and centre in our minds at the moment, and how we can make those not just community cool spaces but resilient spaces for communities in the future. But I'll pop that down. I don't know who else has got other things or want to emphasise other areas. So I will be quiet and make notes as we go along. Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a couple of sort of general suggestions. One is local government reorganisation. I wonder whether this committee could have any input into looking at how we protect and hopefully transition the excellent work that our climate and nature teams have done into whatever comes next. How we support that. And what was the other thing? Joint local plan 2, as somebody mentioned, whether there's a role for this committee to look at particularly the sort of climate and nature policies that we might be looking for in the next joint local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Absolutely. I think we'll try not to say, because we don't know how much we can say on local government review and things like that. But it's certainly I'm very hopeful that a lot of this work will be taken forward. Perhaps seeing one or two councils around the country at the moment where it's not being, but hopefully that won't be the case in our patch. But we shall see. Are there any other questions or ideas that people would like to either reiterate that they want to be on the future agendas, or other topics to raise? Councillor Norman James, thank you.
Actually, just to say that I don't have any ideas in my head at this moment, but are we able to submit ideas as we turn things over in our minds after this meeting?
Absolutely.
And who would we send them to?
Probably Dominic and Candida and myself, although they are definitely much more organised in terms of setting agendas and everything like that. But certainly anything you come across in the interim would be good. I would also like it if we can, as a group, as a committee, can share those ideas in between meetings. So that would be really helpful, and absolutely would welcome contact. I'm sure we all would, from any of us, to see how we can best help, particularly with the opportunities for grants in the future. I'm sure there's great opportunity, and certainly it's a topic where politically I think we're all aligned with getting the best for our community in our area. So anything we can do to have a collaborative effort on that, I think would be really welcome. Thank you. Are there any more questions, or have we come to a natural end? Dominic, is there anything else you would like to raise, or any of the other officers?
No, I want to thank the committee for some very useful input. So thank you from the team.
Yeah, thank you all for your attendance and your attention, and thanks again to council officers for some brilliant things. We have a guest question from Sue Cooper, and I perhaps should just say Sue is a councillor for Benson and UL, which has one of the most impressive watercress beds and tasty watercress beds, I can testify. So Sue, can we have a question there as a guest?
Yeah, I put my question in the chat, actually. I wondered if there were any points that you specifically wanted the cabinets to raise, or will they all come via Dominic? I mean, it's up to you how you advise us.
Can I, Councillor Tinsley, do you mind if I just say that?
No, please do.
Obviously, the suggestions made are going to be minuted, and Cabinet will be able to read the suggestions made by the committee.
Thank you. Yes, I'm aware I'm here and Councillor Clegg's here, so we can convey your thoughts anyway. Thank you.
One of the things I would like to raise that I have perhaps raised in the past, and it's thinking particularly of my own ward in North East Didcot. There's plenty of legacy or remaining hedgerows and ditches which perhaps could be repurposed and revitalised, both for nature recovery and in holding water within the landscape, which is something that would be beneficial on many different fronts. So again, that's something I'll probably put in there to see if we can look at. It probably needs first off a bit of a feasibility study. But is there anything else? Well, thank you all for your attention. It's always a fairly long meeting, but a very interesting one. And I don't know about you guys, but my brain's spinning, and I've learned some new stuff, which is absolutely fantastic, and lots more I want to look into. So with that, I will close the meeting. Wish you all a very good evening, and thank you again for your time as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Take care.